Something you've probably never heard of if you're not from the formerly wonderful state of Victoria is the Uruk Justice Commission. The Uruk Justice Commission is Australia's first formal truth-telling inquiry, established in May 2021 as a joint initiative between the Victorian Government and the First People's Assembly of Victoria. That's Victoria's sort of voice to Parliament, even though we did have a little referendum on those things and decided they were racist and divisive and we weren't going to have them. But it seems the good old Socialist People's Republic of the South didn't get the memo. Anyway, named after the Wamba Wamba word for truth, Uruk was created to investigate historical and ongoing injustices experienced by First Peoples in Victoria since colonisation. It operates independently and holds the full legal powers of a royal commission. After 4 years, yes, that's right, 4 years of investigation, it's just released its final reports, which document evidence of systemic injustice, including the finding that Victoria's Indigenous population was decimated by up to 95% since 1834 due to mass killings, disease, sexual violence, cultural erasure, and child removal, and the identification of these actions as constituting genocide. As a result of those findings, which are hotly contested, I should point out, the Commission made 100 recommendations aimed at addressing these injustices, ranging from structural reforms to compensation schemes. And these recommendations are non-binding. They're intended to inform future treaty negotiations and systemic reforms. The finding of genocide and the subsequent recommendations have been slammed by critics as patently false, politically motivated, radical and extreme, among other things. The distinguished commentator and economist Henry Uruk wrote in The Australian this week that the most serious and by far the most depressing aspect of the report is that anyone would take it seriously. He says he doesn't doubt the sincerity of the many Indigenous witnesses that the Commission interviewed, nor does he deny that the encounter between European settlers and Aborigines was tragic in many cases. But he says a commitment to truth-telling imposes weighty responsibilities made all the weightier by the Commission's official status, because no truth is more elusive than that about the distant past. Therefore, any historian's duty is not just to rigorously test the evidence, he writes, but it's also to scrupulously present any authoritative material that speaks against the conclusion that's eventually reached. But this commission didn't do that. It even openly said that truth-telling is not about debate. Henry Uruk notes that nor was there any testing of evidence, presentation of contrary views, or attempt to engage with critics. He says nowhere is that more apparent than in the claimed finding of genocide. He says the Commission cites some historians who examined those claims of genocide, but then it conveniently fails to mention in its report that they largely dispute, often quite strongly, the claim. That isn't history, he says, but tarted up propaganda. Joining me to discuss all of this is Alexandra Marshall, the host of Spectator TV Australia and the editor of Spectator Flat White. Alexandra, great to have you back on the other side.
Oh, thank you for inviting me.
100 recommendations from this Victorian Commission. They're good at making recommendations, these commissions. It calls for the establishment of a permanent Indigenous-only voice to Parliament, reparations payments, the exemption of Indigenous Australians from the payment of certain taxes, and as the IPA's Daniel Wild puts it, more land to be locked up purely for the use of Indigenous Victorians and nobody else. He says it's a doctrine for permanent and extreme political and legal separatism and the establishment of a two-tiered society in Victoria to be used as a boilerplate federally. I really hope not. Did they not get the memo about the voice?
Well, the first thing we may notice about the Truth-Telling Commission is it has very little interest in truth.
Right.
Because if you read what they have based a lot of the entire mission for having this sort of semi-royal commission style event, is that they're retelling Australian history from an activist viewpoint that completely disregards all the positives that came from the settlement and the co-culture that built this wonderful country. It is such a negative worldview to have and to teach our children, which is also inside all these recommendations, is how we're going to present our history so we can create a new future, which, Damien, by the way, is steeped in racism. The idea that we will have racial exemptions from taxation, racial exemptions from public land and our birthright of our natural resources, race based privileges on jobs and entry and education. All of these things, what I can't understand, Damien, is why hasn't this commission fallen afoul of 18C and our Human Rights Commission, given it is predicated almost entirely on a racist belief?
Yeah. And I think this is something also, just to sort of switch it up a bit here for a second, because it's just popped into my head, Alexandra. But, I'm a very, been very pro-Israel, obviously, on this show. I get a little concerned, though, when I hear the Jewish lobby, and it is mainly the left-wing Jewish lobby in Australia, not the right-wing Jewish lobby in Australia, but we've had all these horrible attacks this week and in recent weeks in all over the country, which have got to stop, because this is not the place to bring Middle East conflict. Australia is not the place to play that out, and it's unacceptable from anyone. But I do worry when the left-wing Jewish lobby start talking about anti-Semitism and having laws to kind of restrict free speech and to, have all these restrictions on saying these, and they don't think about the fact that that can work against people too, that we've got to stop the whole identity politics thing altogether, right? And including with the Aboriginal question. I mean, we've got to have a future that doesn't see race, that doesn't hold on to past grievance, that moves forward to build the present and the future. Because we're going back generations, like, half a dozen generations. It's nuts to be digging up and thinking that modern Aboriginal people or modern Indigenous people are suffering because of stuff that happened 200 years ago without looking at some of the benefits that have come in that 200 years as well.
Well, we do not have an Australia lobby. There is nobody lobbying on behalf of Australians or freedom for that matter. What we have is this crucible of activism where every identity imaginable is now vying for attention, but more importantly, public money with all of their side projects. And they are manipulating Australia and all of our fears in order to gain notoriety. I mean, look at the BLM
BLM.
activists that we
Yep.
had. Look at the environmental activists. How much money is going toward the environment, or more particularly net zero, because of the lobbying of activist groups who stand to profit from that lobbying? But also, you're talking about particularly this crackdown on free speech. It's a little bit worse than that. It's almost a social credit system. I think that Albanese was flirting with the idea yesterday of keeping track of our comments online in a great big AI database, which is a little bit concerning to say the least.
It's
But what they are
terrifying.
trying to do is solve a policy problem with new legislation. And the policy problem is big Australia. Let's bring as many people as we can in from parts of the world where there are ongoing civil disputes and social disputes and religious disputes that have been happening for thousands of years that we cannot solve in Australia. They brought all these people in here together. They're still fighting amongst each other. And now we're saying, Australians, you have to lose your rights because we've imported these foreign wars and foreign disputes. And Chris Minns, as good as he said that basically, the consequence of having a big multicultural Sydney is that you can't have your liberties and freedoms that you were born to.
Oh my God. Okay, yeah. Look, and I mean, it's not like there's no template for this, for where it can head, right? I mean, we've only got to look at the UK right now to see just the appalling state of their freedom of speech liberties being eroded, well, just totally taken away by this evil regime of a Labor government that they've got at the moment, locking people up for having contrary views to the government on social media. Did you ever think you'd see that coming out of the United Kingdom?
Well, Nigel Farage was on Twitter this morning saying that thanks to Sadiq Khan, who was the mayor of London, you cannot leave your house without being robbed. And if you go out of your house wearing a nice wristwatch, well, you'll be killed. That's how bad London has become now with its crime. And also, I sat through the E-Safety Commissioner's National Press Club address
Poor
where
you.
she was casually, to be fair, Damien, I had to actually read the transcript because I could not listen to her for an hour. But anyway, she was reminded that she might not be able to re-enter the US because the US is cracking down on countries that have a negative approach to free speech. And she seemed to be surprised that there might be consequences for her actions, despite the fact she loves to preach consequences for speech.
Oh, the hypocrisy is profound, and the lack of morality is profound around the idea of preserving free speech. And the attacks, it's like, oh, it's just evil Donald Trump with some evil policy. No, actually promoting the idea of free speech and standing up for free speech and saying if you don't honour that value, you can't come into America is a pretty smart thing to do. We might want to take a leaf out of their book, but we seem to have government and a political class, as you know, this extends into our major opposition party as well, this love of censorship, right?
Well, I thought it was interesting that one of the Jewish lobby groups was saying they reject the new proposal. Which
Yes, the
involves
Australian
censorship.
Jewish,
But
which
what
is,
they did is they said it sounded like it was straight out of Donald Trump's playbook, which is really odd because Donald Trump is not in favor of censorship.
no, I don't know.
So I don't
Was
know
that the
how they
AJA that
managed
said
to
that?
make that leap. It was a bit of a strange leap.
I have to talk to David Adler on that. We'll get him on the show and see if that was them. I'm not sure if that was the Australian Jewish Association.
I don't think it was his organization, but I
Right.
read that. I went,
Oh, it's a different one. Okay.
the one thing Donald Trump is not in favor of is silencing speech. What he was doing was deporting activists from Harvard and other universities in America who did exactly what you were saying. They were manipulating the education system for the purposes of activism instead of allowing, well, for example, in Australia, our students to get on with the business of learning something useful to bring Australia forward.
Yep. That's exactly right. It's really, I mean, we've got to get our thinking very consistent and clear around this stuff. It's very dangerous if we start to be double-sided on freedom of speech. I mean, you've got to be pretty clear on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And, the traditional line is, are you inciting real violence? And unfortunately, the authorities in the UK have really gone too far the other way. Locking people up in the state of affairs over there is just appalling, and we seem to be heading in the same direction. And AI is dangerous technology, folks. I was listening to something on the radio this morning. The ABC were catching up. There was two hosts, and one of them said, it seems that, this checking of ages online of young people is going to mean that everybody is going to have to go through an age verification online with their social media and hand their real identity over. And it's like, welcome to reality, guys. We've been saying this for a year. You finally worked it out what this is really about.
But they haven't thought this through at all,
No.
Damien.
Oh, they were shocked. They were stunned and amazed.
No. I mean, it was my birthday yesterday, and women are very
Happy birthday.
very sketchy about their ages. Okay, they don't really like their friends knowing how old they are, let alone the government or social media. Imagine how upset and victimized we are going to feel when AI gets our age wrong and tells us that we're older than we look.
Oh, that's the other thing. Yes, there's the AI guessing your age. That's the other thing they're going to be doing, looking at your data online and seeing how old you really are. So, the future is not bright for us in terms of our privacy, is it? Great to talk to you.
But really, it's basically Skynet, so we need to be really careful about this.
We do indeed. Alexandra, thanks for joining us the day after your birthday.
Thank you so
You're
much
looking
for
very
having
bright
me.
and chirpy. Okay, take care. See you soon. I want to tell you about a fantastic initiative that's happening out of Canberra right now. It's called the Awards for Men in Leadership. The awards are given out on International Men's Day, which is November 19. They're designed to combat the increasing denigration of masculinity in our culture and the widespread discrimination against males inside and outside the workplace. The goal is to lift the well-being of boys and men and facilitate healthy collaboration between men and women. The awards for men in leadership are designed to inspire men to make a bigger contribution to family and community and to elevate positive male role models. There's a $10,000 scholarship for studies and professional development, public recognition for the winners, and a year of mentorship and executive coaching for each recipient. It's targeted at young men and middle-aged guys who fought their way up from some other kind of disadvantage. This is the third year of the awards and it'll be the biggest yet. To find out more, just search up the Awards for Men in Leadership on Facebook. That was a segment clip from our weekly Friday night news show, The Other Side, which you can watch in full by simply going to YouTube and searching up The Other Side Australia. Then you'll find our full shows playlist. You can also find all of our full shows and our segments on our own website, othersidetv.com.au. That's othersidetv.com.au. Help us build a whole new Aussie media by joining us over there and signing up for the exclusive side.